Everybody to social services on 4th of January 2022, and can I wish everybody Happy New Year?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Bill.
All right. And
Happy New Year, thank you.
we can read the documentary on saying, I would like to remind everybody that some of the instructions included in the remote meeting protocol. Everyone will be muted, ask to speak and mute yourself. And when you finish speaking, mute. If you have any questions, press the virtual hand screen and the chair will invite you to speak, one person at a time. Please do not speak until the chair invites you in. If you have a comment to make, you should raise the symbol of the hand when the chair asks for comments again, and you will be invited to speak, one person at a time. Any reason a member has cause to leave the meeting, then they must indicate to the chair before leaving. Please raise your hand or send a message on the line chat. Case law, if you haven't you're not allowed to vote if you haven't heard the full debate. So if the screen freezes, you have the whole debate, then you have to have your own discretion. Whatever you vote, wherever you did not hear the whole debate, you cannot vote. Then we come to recommendations. You are invited to vote. Could you please ask all officers and guests to turn off the cameras so that only elected members and lay members on the scene, you should turn on your cameras, microphone while you're speaking on this item. Please turn them back off again afterwards. Could I please ask Democratic Services to mute everybody in the beginning and recording and refer to the published agenda. Okay? We go back to the agenda now. First thing is the declaration of interest. Members are reminded that the personal responsibility to declare any personal and prejudicial interests in respect of matters contained in the agenda in accordance with the provision of the Local Government Financial Act 1992 related to the council tax, Local Government Act 220, the council constitution members code of conduct, and we go to A and B. First thing on the agenda is a regional partnership, and I believe that's Lisa.
Excuse me, Bill, I got my hand up. I'd like to declare interest in this item, as I'm a foster carer for Merthyr Borough Council and I'm employed by him as a foster carer.
So David, you declare interest to safeguard yourself?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mark.
Yes, Chair, no problem, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Liz, back to you, dear.
Okay, that's fine. If I just quickly go through the report then. This is an update on the developments of the work of the Regional Partnership Board. So the RPB, as we call it, was set up in 2017 with Bridgen joining in 2019. So it's now the Cwmtach Morgannwg Regional Partnership Board. We completed a population needs assessment initially, which helped us to develop the plan that the board abide by. And that population needs assessment is currently being reviewed and revamped as we speak. And obviously Bridgen will be part of that now, whereas previously we just joined the two population needs assessments together. There are two areas of funding. So there's been the transformation funding pot, which is jointly with health and all the three local authorities, and the integrated care fund. So you will have heard me talk about that previously. And that's helped to sort of fund various projects and innovations over the last couple of years. Things like Stay Well at Home and some of the closer to home projects we've done in children's services. So underneath the Regional Partnership Board, there are two subgroups. One is the Children's Board, which is chaired by myself, and the other is the Adult Board, which is chaired by the Director in Bridgend. The Children's Group, we've got two themes that we follow, and then there are priorities that sit under that. So we look at an integrated approach to accommodation, care and support for those with complex needs, because that's one of the growing areas, certainly young people with mental health issues and more complex issues. And then to promote an integrated approach to emotional and physical resilience within children and young people, and more so than ever that we've needed to do that because of the pandemic. The Adults Board work slightly differently in that they've got a number of priorities, and those are around the care homes, community services, and looking at the model for community services, and dementia. Again, all areas that we need significant resources into over the next couple of years. 5.8 to 5.11 of the report sort of gives you an idea around some of the spend that we've had in revenue funding over the last couple of years and sort of recent spending. And then 5.17 outlines some of the funding that's come into Merthyr Tydfil, specifically around capital funding, some of the projects that we're looking to develop. Section 7 of the report obviously talks about how we need to sort of respond in future, so we need to start planning for the future funding. We know that Integrated Care Fund is going to come to an end on the 31st of March 2022, but what we have been advised is that we will still have some funding, but it'll be in a different format. It'll be a 5-year programme. We're likely to have to match fund it. I think initially we've been advised that it'd be 90% funding with Merthyr, then match funding at 10%. Now, we'd already knew the ICF was coming to an end, so we'd already started a budget for that in our sort of core budgets for things moving forward. We're reviewing and evaluating all the programmes that were set up, because obviously some have had sort of, better changes within the service. So Stay Well at Home, we're very keen, that's been developed into Stay Well at Home 2, trying to keep people out of hospital. As you know, with the current time, we're trying to help health as best we can and try and keep people in the community rather than going to hospital setting. So even more so that service is more important as we speak now. So that's certainly something health are keen to continue to support. So the funding is likely to be available for that. And then obviously we'll look at developing other initiatives as we move forward. So that's the sort of whistle-stop tour of that report. I appreciate it's quite detailed, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate it. Ian, I think you have a question to ask. You're on mute. Ian, you're on mute.
Sorry, Bill. I'm not having a not very brightly lit room. I couldn't see the button. I've got 3 questions. Bill, shall I ask them one
Yeah,
after
you carry
another?
on. Yeah.
Okay, is that all right, Lisa? The first question, on page 4, item 3.3, you talk about one of the aims being to support people to manage their own health and well-being. Can you tell me what is meant by people managing their own health? Because I'm not sure, there must be a lot of people who might not be capable of taking decisions, the best decisions about managing their own health. And how does this differ from the present system?
Okay, so for the purpose of this report, it basically means people taking the initiative to prevent them becoming unwell. So things like the Health Board have got projects around obesity and managing people's diabetes and things like that. So, for example, if a person is not putting on weight and they're watching their diet and they're eating healthily, then they may not develop diabetes in older age. And therefore the subsequent health conditions and issues that go with that, obviously, whether it be leg ulcers or leg sores or being immobile and things like that. And obviously when you're immobile and you're in your house, you may have more other health issues and you're not getting that support. You're isolated, befriending services, so you're not getting that sort of feeling of isolation and perhaps the mental health conditions that come from there. It's about sort of trying to support people with substance misuse and sort of so that they are not going to have ongoing health needs. So it's about that sort of education. So trying to do that preventative work so that we educate people to look after themselves better so that they are able to live in their own homes for longer periods of time rather than have to come into maybe a residential or have statutory services at a much younger age.
All right, so that's the ongoing management then, with your support. That's fine. Lisa, page 5, item 5.5. You talk about you're going to develop and implement a care home action plan.
Yeah.
Can you just give me a flavour of what sort of things would that plan cover?
Okay, so coming out of the pandemic now, we need to start thinking about how the care home, how that's going to look in the future. So in the past, we've had a lot of residential homes, for example. And as you know, in Merthyr ourselves, we had 4 care homes. We've now only got 2. The bed capacity there has changed over the years. Because people are, if they come into requiring that residential support, they're more likely to need sort of EMI nursing or dementia care services and quite high-end need. So it's about reviewing and looking at what do we need in the community for moving forward. The pandemic has made huge changes, and obviously that's something we need to think about, because in some, we've been lucky in our local authority, I have to say, but in some local authorities, care homes have closed. One because of staffing or because residents have passed away, and financially it's just not been feasible for them to continue. So we need to just look at what do we need, what do the residents of Merthyr Tydfil need in the longer term. So is it more extra care facility? Is it, do we need more learning disability sort of, residential placements? And it's having that holistic look at it across the 3 local authorities. And then obviously what we'll do is tailor what the assessment and review tells us. We will tailor future services for that. So something that we'll talk to you about in the future is developing a extra care facility, because we certainly think that in the future that's something there's going to be demand for.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much.
Can I stop you for a second? Gaina, you got to wind up your question or answer something?
Yeah, sorry, I was only apologising for being a bit late. My computer had crashed. I've been on trying to get it back.
Welcome to the party, as I say. We all
Back on for the last 15 minutes. So sorry, apologies for being late.
We all got. I'm in the civic centre, so that's my computer's working. Ian, sorry about that. So carry on.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Lisa, page 7, under the heading Work Stream 4. You talk about adult social care single points of access being extending its open hours from 5 to 7 days a week and from 8:30 to 8 p.m. To enable individuals to remain safely at home and avoid unnecessary conveyancing to hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 things. What happens outside those hours is one, and ongoing, as we combine local government and NHS services more and more, is it going to be a problem when they work to different hours, by and large? The health NHS roughly being open 24/7, for local government being much more restricted. Is that going to cause you a problem, or will there be changes?
Okay, so if I answer the first question first, currently, so if you need a service outside of the 8:30 to 8, then there's obviously various services available. We've got the emergency duty team, which if you're an adult or child, you can contact that number and somebody will be in contact and offer support accordingly. There's obviously the Welsh Ambulance Service. So at the moment, between the hours of 8:30 and 8, then obviously they can assist, but sometimes people will call the ambulance service as opposed to us, the police, or people will turn up at accident and emergency. So that number is about sort of trying to prevent that escalation into that to other services. With regards to the sort of difference in hours, we work different hours now. So health tend to work 3 different shifts. Whereas, the 8:30 to 8, you'll have 2 different lots of staff on that time, because obviously they wouldn't work the 12-hour shift. So I don't think it'll have that much of an effect on us. Certainly sort of funding is moving forward. If we think we need to extend that service as part of the new innovation, then that's something we'll think about. And also, there's also other services like Lifeline that runs between 8 p.m. and 8:30. So there are services there, but obviously we'll look at if there are going to be changes and developments in the service, then we'll make those changes accordingly.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
You all right?
That's it. Thank you, Bill.
Jack?
Chair, I think Gareth had his hand up
All right,
first.
no problem. Sorry, Gareth.
No problem, Chair. Thank you, Jack. Just a couple of quick questions, Lisa. 'Cause I think Ian asked some very pertinent ones. It's regarding the work streams in each group.
Mhm.
Are they decided by that subgroup themselves then, or does it come from the main board?
Right, so it comes from the population needs assessment in reality. So the population needs assessment was completed, X amount of years ago, and obviously we'll be doing it now. But we look at sort of the various priorities, where the funding has been aligned over the last couple of years. We set up the children and the adults group then so that we can look at specific priorities.
Yeah.
So obviously looking at what the population needs assessment is telling us, and then obviously developing the plans accordingly. So the adult group have got the relevant officers who attend that, from health, the third sector, the local authorities, and similarly on the children's group. And then they look at where are the gaps, what are the areas we need to focus on, and where do we need the funding in the future. So that's where the priorities have come from.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And my other one then, Chair, was in relation to paragraph 5.3, the regional integrated children's residential accommodation.
Yeah.
Obviously, works began this autumn. Is there sort of any end date that is to report back by, Lisa, or is it an open-ended project?
Okay, so there's quite a detailed report that sits behind that.
Yeah.
There's various stages. So the first stage has already been completed. So that was specific work that was being done around a home in Bridgend and in RCT for some works around the garden, some small capital works to make sure that those homes were up and running in a short period of time.
Yeah.
There's feasibility studies that are being completed. The one for Merthyr was delayed because the person that we commissioned to do it couldn't do it for capacity reasons. So that's now been pushed to a deadline, I think, of the end of March. So we should have an idea then about potential feasibility as if we need a residential in the future, and what should that look like, etc. And then there's, I think the funding is made available, the short-term funding is available till March for some of the smaller pieces of work. And then obviously we'll extend that into next year, till the end of next year, to look at a regional approach to the problem, if you like. Because I think we're all finding now that residential is on the increase, and there's just no capacity in, locally for children in residential.
Gareth on mute.
Sorry, Chair, I was just thanking Lisa for a response.
Okay. Jack?
Thank you, Chair. This is just going back on Ian's point where he asked about what happens outside these hours. Now, bearing in mind, when someone phones the emergency social services number, it's obviously important, to be honest. Now, about 3 years ago, an issue came up where somebody phoned through on that number and nobody answered. Now, in this early December, just gone, a resident near me had to phone the number again. In regards to someone was having an issue. It was in relation to dementia, and they weren't sure what to do. And when they got through to someone, they said, "Oh, there's nobody here. You'll have to phone back in the morning." Now, bearing in mind, when people phone through, as I said, these numbers, it's quite serious. Who has oversight on the emergency social services number that you would phone? And also, have you got figures or data to show that the issues that I just mentioned there are not common practice? Because in the pre-meeting, Ian also mentioned that he had an issue with a resident that had phoned that number as well at one time.
Okay. I mean, that's quite worrying to hear. So I'd be interested to know what number they did ring and to check that they are ringing the right number. The emergency duty team is a joint team that is run by RCT, Merthyr and Bridgend, and it's managed by RCT Council, and it sits, so it was managed under RCT's HR guidance, I guess. I believe it sits under Lyndon Lewis, who manages the youth offending service. So certainly I can find out that information, and if need be, bring a report back to Scrutiny around, you know, the data about the number of calls they have and what they deal with, and, you know, that sort of data. The reality is it is an emergency team, so they do deal with sort of high-end crisis, if you like, because they only have a small number of staff on at any one time. So they usually have 2 sort of children staff on. They usually have 2 adults. They hopefully have one on that's AMF qualified, so they would be able to do mental health assessments if and when required. It is a sort of a small, if you like, infinite service, in that if there's 2 child protection referrals going on and the 2 child protection social workers are out, then there would be you know, you'd be on a list, I guess, waiting to go out, but the police would work with them if the crisis was needs to be dealt with straight away. And obviously we work with health colleagues as well on that call. So they are sort of other resources we can access. I know that people often mistake Lifeline for emergency duty, and they are basically, you know, people who are answering a phone and can sort of try and help. But obviously, if the situation, you can wait until the morning, then that would be the advice that would be given. So if you can give me the numbers they've contacted, and I can certainly follow that up.
Lovely, thank you, Lisa. I'd contact the resident again to see what number they did phone.
Okay.
And I do know the police were in attendance, and they said very good things about the police and not very good things about social services, to be honest. Okay, thank you.
All right, at least we take you up on Lyndon if we do a bit of reports, how many people that we've been looking after the last couple of years, you know, because this coronavirus has caused major problems everywhere. So can we have a bit of a report on it, at least so we know what we're talking about and phone numbers?
Yeah, I'll certainly find out from them and see if we can get something to you.
Right, Lisa, on 5, any question? Deck, finish? All right, finish.
Yes, Chair, sorry, finished.
On 5.1, Lisa, you got is a representative from Merthyr, so that's the cabinet member sits in that group.
Right, so the cabinet member and the leader sits on the regional partnership board, but in the subgroups that sit underneath, we don't have cabinet members sitting on the subgroups. So the representatives are officers. So I sit on the Merthyr Tidville children's group, and Taryn sits on the children's group. And then we obviously have attendance from other officers who work in Merthyr. So that would be like Sharon Richards from VAMP sits on it, and health colleagues from our locality group teams, they sit on there as well, representing Merthyr.
So where do all the minutes go from the meetings, because they discuss in Merthyr in general, right? So how do we as a scrutiny get that information back to see what's happening? Do they send the minutes out, or is it only done every so often?
Taryn and I obviously get copies of the minutes, and I approve them because I'm the chair. But certainly I can sort of share details with you if it's you know, relevant to Merthyr for any projects and things we're doing. So I can do that once I get the minute.
Okay, thank you very much. And the other one is released on, I'll find it out in a minute, on the Dementia Action Plan. Where are we with that action plan for that? Because dementia is getting, everybody's talking about it, everybody's afraid of it, even, so are we got a big plan ready, and what you come into it?
So the plan is still under review. The deadline for that is to be finalised by the end of March, because obviously any new funding coming in, we'd want to be ready to put bids in for April 22. Oh no, that's sorry, March. I don't know whether that's a typo. So the review's been completed. And the dementia, we've got a dementia plan, but it's about reviewing it ready for the new funding. so that we're ready to sort of progress then from the 1st of April with any new funding that comes forward. So this, part of the dementia plan was the development of TNFIS up at Keir Hardy, and that was looking at the how we do day services differently, and that's been a huge success. I mean, unfortunately, because of COVID, the official launch of it was delayed, and it was cancelled again in December because the minister wouldn't attend because of current circumstances. So hopefully that will be formally launched next year or this year sometime.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any more questions, Lisa, on this partnership report? No? Lisa, thank you very much. Now we go back on. David is back in, please.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, and then we go back on item 4, it's the annual report, social services complaints. Gaina, welcome. We haven't seen it since 2 years ago. Did you have a good holiday?
Yeah, a good break, yes. Yeah.
Right, Gain, it's up to you. You're going to kick it off?
Right, okay. Yeah, well, this is the annual report for 2021. With the stats finalised, because obviously sometimes because we run from April to April and complaints can run for 6 months on, this is why we usually give the stats a little bit later. So if I take you, this is where I miss being in the office because I'd like to have it in front of me better than this, but if I just narrow it down here. So these are the stats for 20. I have done a comparison on the last few years, but we had in Children's Services 67 complaints. 46 of those were not upheld, 9 withdrawn, 3 partially upheld, 2 didn't merit an investigation, and 7 upheld. Then you can see with the adult services, I'm just coming down onto a page and bringing, the first part is the introduction, which stays the same year after year. So it tells you a little bit about the categories that we put the complaints under. But I've done a bit, after there was a request from the councillors to have a bit more of a breakdown on that. Than just a generic one. So you'll see on page 8 that there's a bit more of a theme put on there, because I think it was the themes that the councillors were interested in seeing, to have a bigger picture really on what the complaints were regarding. Adult services, we had 31 complaints, 20 of those not upheld, 2 withdrawn, 3 which fell into the remit of data protection, 3 not merited, 1 partial, and then 2 upheld. So on both the adults and children's, there was a very low percentage of the complaints upheld. We did see, obviously, 2021 covers when we went into lockdown first, and we did see a quiet period from the April to roughly about the June. We had a lot of corporate complaints in, but the social services complaints had quietened down, especially with adult services. As lockdown was easing then, we did see a pickup on the complaints coming through, especially with children's services. So how does really what we want to look at on page 10 is what the data tells us, and there's the trend then really on previous years that you can see. So you can see that they have slightly dropped on the previous year of 1920. That would account for that quieter period that we had in April and May with social services. And as always, adult services will always be lower than children's services. They are usually more reluctant complainers. They're usually a little bit, and obviously with adult services, they usually want us in their lives. But with children's services, it's usually a case of that they don't want children's services in their lives, so they will find something to complain about. So we recorded altogether 98 recorded complaints compared with 103 in the previous year. So it did sort of significantly pick back up when that first initial quarter period came through. So those are for the stage 1s. For the stage 2s, as you're aware, this would be for social services, would warrant that we have an independent investigator through. And also, if it's a children's complaint, we have an independent investigator and an independent person who monitors the work of the independent investigator. That report is commissioned by ourselves, the local authority, and we obviously do pay for it. I don't put a barrier, although, I don't put a barrier up with us going to stage 2, but we have to be clear, or the complainant as well has to be quite clear on what the desired outcomes are from going to stage 2. For example, if something has been upheld and perhaps we've apologised in stage 1, we wouldn't then necessarily progress that to stage 2 because we've addressed it at stage 1. And again, we need to be clear, a lot of the desired outcomes, especially in children's services, are for specific actions to be put onto a staff member. But that's not what an independent investigator is there for. They are there to see if there's any recommendations. They're not there to hire or fire staff from that point of view. So we do make it clearer from that. Should we refuse a stage 2, which is very rare, but if we do refuse it because we don't feel that it warrants an investigation, they have the option of going to the Ombudsman. But I can say for 2021, we had no case where we were forced to go to a stage 2 by direction of the Ombudsman. So I'm comfortable with the decisions that we've made because there was no stage 2 overridden by the Ombudsman for us to go through from what the decision that we had made. Usually as well with the stage 1, a lot of the time it is down to communication, lack of communication perhaps from a social worker, or they haven't been returning calls, or they feel that something. So usually there's a lot of work that goes into a stage 1 complaint, and I can only take this opportunity to praise the managers within children's services and adult services, because part of the social services complaint process is that we offer the complainant a meeting. Now, as you can appreciate, when we went into isolation first, it was a little bit of a difficult situation as far as setting up the meetings were concerned, because we couldn't meet in person. So we were doing telephone meetings with like conference call. But now I'm pleased to say that the Teams app is usually used by a lot of members of the public as well. So we have been able to conduct all the meetings via Teams from there. And we haven't had any upheld complaints from the Ombudsman that we have caused a barrier with regards to progressing anybody's complaints. So until we're at a time where we can meet in person, then, I mean, in the last financial year, I have actually been to one person's house, and that was during out of the lockdown time. But we have offered the opportunity, and that's for managers to meet as well. And it is the willingness of the managers to spend a bit of time on those meetings, which I think contribute to the low percentage of complaints that do actually go to stage 2 then. The more work we put in it at stage 1, and the more that we can kind of get to the bottom of what the complainant is actually looking for and the realistic desired outcomes, then the percentage of stage 2s then remain quite low. So if we go on to page 13, you can see then the themes that I broke it down onto. The children's services will be staff issues, and that's usually a lot of the complaints with children's services are on the social worker, usually because they don't want that social worker in their life. They don't want children's services in their life. So there's usually some breakdown with the relationship between the social worker. But these meetings that we've had, I've done a lot to remedy that and to improve it. The manager comes on to the meeting. To change a social worker is not something that we would take a request very lightly, because we have to think of the benefit of the child and the consistency in that child's life. But what we try and do is see how we can drill down and improve the relationship, the manager, between the complainants and the social worker. And I think I can only recall in that year once that we had to change the social worker because of a complete and utter breakdown on that. that there was no way that we could improve it on there. As you can appreciate with the social services complaints compared to corporate complaints, the complexity is high. So there is a lot of time involved. So sometimes the stats that you see don't reflect the amount of work that both the complaints department put in and the managers and the staff as well. But again, the managers are very open to having meetings, discussing it and trying to resolve the complaints. We don't want people to be unhappy, but we are glad that they give us the opportunity to put things right as well. So I always thank complainants, because I would far rather them come to myself than to go onto social media, which is something that we can't get involved in then. At the moment, we still got one person vexatious. This one person will continue to be vexatious for at least the next 6 months, and that's because of their complete reluctance to accept the response that we've given. The complaint process has been completely exhausted all the way through, but they refuse to accept that. So the only way that we can protect the staff and the time that they've put into this is make them subject to the vexatious policy, which means all their emails come through to myself then in complaints. And what we made quite clear is if it's something that we've already responded to, we won't respond again. So that just limits the amount of time that we've going through. The only thing that I will notice, that I have noticed in the last year, and this is at the end of the point, page 14, is the ante has up since lockdown and since COVID, and the emails have become far more abusive. Members of public have become more abusive, and quite sort of some vile in some of their communications. Because now I do come under legal, and legal are very supportive. We're supporting staff around that. Offensive comments, and we have written probably to more members of the public in the last 18 months, advising them that abusive, emails or phone calls won't be tolerated, and that we have had to manage people's communications. Then again, it would come through to myself, and we do ask members of the public to present themselves in a polite and coherent manner. But I have noticed, that, and that's not just myself in Merthyr, that's my colleagues in other authorities as well. So probably because people are not communicating in person, we do understand that there's a higher level of mental health. And we do try and sympathise, but we also have a duty to protect the staff from, very abusive behaviour, from some of the comments that we've had. So if we go back onto page 15, then we're going to see the outcomes. And the outcomes are important because those are the ones where, something's been found to be upheld or not upheld. And you'll see that 42 upheld overall, but if we break it down into 2021, then there was 7 upheld with children's services, and most of those then would be something that we've had to pick up from, and usually down to communication as well. I'll go back through any questions anybody got when I'm just rushing through it now, but obviously I'll pick up on any points from there. And then quite importantly then on page 16, and it's something that I've been trying to promote, and we have had an increase in these, is having the compliments through. The compliments are just as important as the complaint, and it usually takes somebody a lot more effort to put a compliment in than it is to put a complaint in, because they're not actually going to achieve anything from it. But the compliments are what we're doing right. And I think it's essential that all those compliments then are cascaded to Lisa, and comments are made from there, and positively cascaded down to the staff. So I've put a section in with some examples of some of the compliments that we've had. And then going on to page 18, another important aspect of complaints is, as cliche as it sounds, is lessons learned. So I've put some examples of some of the lessons that we've learned from making these complaints, and these usually come from upheld complaints. So they're points that we can pick up from and hopefully improve to prevent whatever, because as I say to staff, you know, that person felt at that time they warranted them to put a complaint in. Whether it's upheld or not, we have to listen and make sure that we pick up on the points that we've had. If it's from a missed phone call, if they were expecting a phone call and they haven't had that phone call, or if it's from having a package of care that they were due to have and they haven't had, then each of them are warranted important, and that's what we sort of make sure we spend our time going through them. So my conclusion is the complaints provide service users and their advocates an effective way of communicating their concerns, so that levels of customer satisfaction can be increased and our services continue to improve. We continue to offer a service. Our percentage to the Ombudsman is exceptionally low, and in fact we had one of the lowest ratios of complaints that we've had in to the Ombudsman from all my other peers that I've seen through South Wales, and this is what we will continue to do. We'll continue to offer this service. We continue to offer advocacy as well, and help those that you know, whether it's another language or whether they need some support with a complaint. And again, we haven't for this time period had a complaint, a bell from the Ombudsman that we weren't providing that service to the members of the public in Merthyr.
All right, sorry, apologize. Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I can record on there somewhere. So, Jack, you're the first one to go hand up.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. Again, just going on to lessons learnt.
Yeah.
And then looking at the chart on 5.2, where it gives the number of complaints over the last 4 years, pretty much all similar, to be honest, you know, the numbers. So I'm just wondering, are we learning lessons? Because one of the things that was mentioned now was social workers not getting back to residents. And I've seen this firsthand in an issue a couple of years ago. Very, very frustrating for the family. Understand the social services, really, really busy as well, but it is very frustrating. So just in regards to that, do staff members receive feedback or training on how to avoid complaints against them, especially where it's you know, getting back to residents on emails? Because I know they're really busy, but when someone is waiting for that phone call, is waiting for that email, and to be honest, when this is child social services, and maybe where children have been taken into care and family members are at their wits' end trying to get information. So that's my first question. And then the second one, then, are there any follow-ups meetings between yourself, Gaynor, and maybe management at social services, if some of those staff members that are having complaints made against them about not getting back to residents, if they're the same staff members all the time, kind of thing? No, I'm not having a go with social services. It's just a question.
I mean, the second part of your question, I would leave that to the principal manager, to the team managers in the one-to-one. Each staff member would know if there's a complaint put in against them, because a discussion would need to be held with the team manager and that staff member. Sorry, we don't bring the staff member in on the meetings. I allow the team manager to have a meeting first, because obviously, as you can appreciate, there's two sides to every story. So they have a meeting, they have a discussion first with that staff member. By the time we have the meeting with the complainant, the team manager has already discussed it with them. Whether they pick that up then with a one-to-ones, if it is a persistent problem, and whether it's a common, you know, the difficulty is that, yes, there are complaints about more departments than others, but that's probably because those departments are dealing with people who don't want social services in their lives, don't want, you know, so there's always be that part of it. Whether the team manager, because sometimes we have the principal manager as well on the meetings. Whether they have a meetings with to follow that up, I would have thought that would be something they'd pick up in their one-to-ones.
Okay, thank you, Gaynor. Yeah, I just want to come back there. It's I completely agree. Two sides to every story, absolutely. And I'm not having a go at social workers or anything like that. It's just that if one of the major complaints is people not getting back to residents, that should be an easy one to rectify.
Yes.
And could bring down the numbers in future. I just thought I'd bring that up.
Definitely. I mean, the golden rule is, you know, under promise, over deliver, rather than the other way round. And this is why we always sympathise with the complainant, because although that social worker, we understand that they have a huge workload, and the social worker might have a number of cases, but for that complainant, this is the only case they have. This is the one thing in their life. And they don't care about, quite rightly so, they don't care about all the other cases. They only care about the one that we're involved with. But I think that the fact that very few of those complaints then go on to stage 2 is my sort of hope then that it has been rectified, and because the complainant have the same opportunity to come back to me after stage 1, to come back to me and say, well, look, because what I do is, after, if we've had a meeting and those issues have been resolved, I do advise the complainant that they have that opportunity to come back to me should things not improve. So should people not be getting phone calls back or not getting the communication that they promised, then they have the opportunity to ring me back up, and we'll pick back up on that again. And I think there's a rarity, maybe, you know, during the lockdown to start with, because of the communication, the change in the communication, and the fact that social workers weren't going out to the houses as much as they would have been before lockdown. But you know, majority of the time, the issues do get resolved.
Lovely, thank you, Gaynor. Yeah, I just brought it up because the numbers are stay the same for over the last 4 years, pretty much, and it just lessons learned. Hopefully, we are learning them. And I pick up on your point. To be honest, you know, it's they've a massive workload, to be honest, and sometimes it is difficult for staff members to get back to residents in the time that they want. That issue is the biggest thing in the world for that resident at the time. And to be honest, it's a lot for councillors as well. Obviously, we're not on the same level as a social worker, but yeah, we get the same complaints to us as well, that we don't get back to residents on time, and normally that issue that they've contacted us on, that they found the courage to contact us on, is the biggest issue in their life at the moment.
At the time, yeah. And you know, the managers are always sympathetic to that. I understand that they want a response. For them, they want, it's like if you had a doctor's result, you'd want the results straight away. You want that update as soon as possible. I do have, though, that, you know, certain complainants will say, well, I've rung 24 times and then rung back. And I said, well, you know, that's too much. You shouldn't be ringing 24 times, you know. It's currently being looked at, and the more that you're ringing them, the more that you're tying them up from doing other things. So their expectations can be quite high as well, can't they? And I think the difficulty we have then is sometimes when they're not being answered to, then their behaviour starts to get a little bit more hostile. So it's trying to manage that. What we try and do in complaints is act as a bit of a buffer while that complaint is going on. So rather than say, look, it is in there, contact us, we'll speak to you until we can get an update on whatever they're requesting.
Lovely, Gaynor, thank you very much.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you, Chair, that's all for me.
Can I add something there, Councillor Smith? So thanks for that, Gaynor, because that's really, you know, excellent information that you've passed out, and obviously standing up for our officers is very much appreciated. One thing we will do is we will learn lessons from some of the complaints. So if there's themes, then obviously we meet with Gaynor regularly. So if it's something that somebody not returning a phone call and it's the same social worker or it's the same team, then obviously that is fed back into that team, and we are sort of, you know, trying to encourage them to make those changes. So we do pick up the themes, and we are looking at lessons learned, and that's, you know, when we're developing services, you know, all the complaints and compliments are taken into account, so they're not ignored. You know, they are things that are followed up.
And I think that's recorded in the amount of complaints that go to stage 2 and the amount of complaints that go to the Ombudsman, because if we continually to ignore these complainants, they have the option of going to the Ombudsman and taking it from there. But that percentage is really low, and I suppose, you know, like I said earlier, complainants' expectations are quite high. We try and manage them in complaints as well. We can't always give a we're not here as a quick way to get through to a social worker. We are here to sort of manage the concerns that they got, and sometimes complaints are about, I didn't like the way that they spoke to me, and they're entitled to have that perception. It doesn't mean that they spoke to them out of turn, but it's just sometimes the way that some people will hear things. And I say, you know, we don't take, I mean, I certainly don't take complaints personally. We take them if that's the perception of the person that they felt that day. We can say that we're sorry you felt that way, but that wasn't what the social worker was trying to say. There's no, I mean, and another thing with social services, I don't quite always get this with corporate, but don't say corporate, I said that, is that they're very open to saying sorry when something's wrong, you know, or sorry that somebody has felt like that. And the Ombudsman will always, we've had training with the Ombudsman, and that's been offered out to social services, and they were very open with that, and felt it was helpful on sometimes how to say, well, we're sorry that you know, we're not admitting guilt of anything, but we still are sorry if you felt that way.
Dick, all right. Again, thank you very much. Appreciate that on the comments you made. David.
Yep, thank you, Bill. Yeah, just a few questions of me. First of all, thank you for that report, because it was easy reading, I'll be quite honest with you. And the figures you show, I can remember sitting where the portfolio was sitting, and often having to apologise because not having enough data. But I can see the state is excellent, to be honest with you, and it's easily read and it's easy to follow through. So thank you for that. You picked up on the verbal abuse on page 32. It's you know, it's sad to see. In the NHS, they've got a policy of any verbal abuse is not tolerated, and I believe we should have that in social services too. That we shouldn't have to take any verbal abuse. In the end, you're there to do it. They're there to do a job. They're not there to be abused. Nice to see the compliments. One thing I want to ask, you know, the advocates, we talk about the advocates. What sort of uptake are we having now with advocates, with speaking for the voice of the child?
Fortunately, we haven't had many children complaints. I don't think we've had one through lockdown. They very and that's not just us in Merthyr, that's general throughout as well. We do have a child advocacy service that we offer straight away when it comes through. Usually they come via, when they did used to come through, they'd come in via the advocate, that they already would have spoken to somebody. But 100% of the time, if it was a children's complaint, an advocacy would be provided.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think going back to the abuse, I mean, I think not just myself, again, my colleagues in other authorities have said the ante has upped. I'm sure you probably everybody's seen it in the roles that they do. But I always take an element of frustration into account when somebody's complaining, and especially when you're the first port of call, they are gonna vent. And I'll always say I never take that personally, to be honest. I'm pretty tough, and I take that on the chin. And you take it. It's if that abuse continues, that's when we gotta say no. That first one. I mean, I had one not so long ago. I was called the Antichrist. I've never been called the Antichrist before. but that was a new one, but because I wouldn't give him a house. But you've just got to think, well, some of these people are unwell, and if I'm going to get upset every time somebody raises their voice, I'm obviously not in the right job. So you leave that first one go, and then should it continue, then we write to them and say, no, you're going to have to sort of tone it down a bit then.
Obviously, I think you partly answered the last question. With COVID, if you look at the last 2 years, but you said that there was a slow uptake for 3 months, I believe you said. For the first quarter. Yeah. Do you think that COVID has made a big difference? Because obviously face-to-face meetings are less and less. Do you think that people tend to rather when they see someone, they normally take it out on the person rather than write something down? Do you think that could have an indication on some of the complaints?
I think the more sort of short, quick hit ones, I call them, where they might be sort of like case management, they reduce to start with. So when we were having complaints, we were having like complex complaints in then that warranted quite a sort of detailed investigation into them. I mean, what I think COVID have done is because people are not so much face-to-face, I think people are a little bit more open then to what they're saying. When we used to sit down in meetings with people, they probably wouldn't be as hostile or as abusive as they are when they're behind a phone or they're on an email. It's very easy for people to put, whatever they want. So I think that's changed with COVID. That's made people, I think a lot of people have become like keyboard warriors and are quite happy to put anything in there. I think, again, going back, it's what we take into account as a rant, as a rant of it. That could be that's the first point. But how that continues, if that behaviour continues, then that's when we sort of and legal have been fantastic with supporting complaints with that. Saying, and I've probably wrote more of those emails in the last, like I said, 18 months than I ever did before. Although it was, it was quiet for those first couple of months. It wasn't with corporate complaints had shot up, but social services. But I think people, maybe they didn't warrant complaints so much. People were perhaps, adult services were probably too scared to complain, and children's services perhaps weren't having as much visits of social workers personally, so didn't warrant complaints. But the corporate ones did go quite. Luckily we were dealing with a lot more of them. But I think the abuse, we just have to manage it. We do. I think we have to allow people to have a voice, but it's how that voice continues.
Thank you, Gay. That's all I've got. Anyhow, thank you very much.
Excuse me, Chair. I can't get my hand to work on this, so hand up. Could I ask Gay another question, please? I'll just comment first that I like this report. I think it's a very good report, and as is the nature of it, you've relied heavily on figures and graphs, and I find them very useful. I particularly like the last one, where you showed the complaints over the last few years steadily rising for both adults and children, and then both steadily falling. But, and I think you've probably answered this in your opening remarks, I noted that the downward graph for the adults started a year before the children. And that was going to be my question, but I don't know if you've got anything else to add on that. But I mean, you did explain the difference between the types of complaints.
I mean, what I think that what I think is with adult services, as I said previously, they are reluctant complainers. They usually, I mean, for a start, adult services want us in their lives. They usually need us for that support. So we're on a little bit of a winner there, as opposed to children's services, who most of the time don't want us there and don't think they need us either. Whereas with adults, they will. Adults as well are usually older people, and more mature older people are usually more reluctant complainants. But maybe it's something where a service is broken down, and then that's where perhaps sometimes the children are complaining on their behalf. I mean, what we've tried to do, and this is why we've had training with the Ombudsman, and adults and children's services were both involved in that training, to make sure that we educate all the staff on our complaint process, and we don't, because what the Ombudsman say to us, they would rather see more complaints recorded. If you look at some of the figures coming from some of the other authorities, they have much less complaints than us. But the Ombudsman says they find that quite suspicious, because it shouldn't be that way. We should be having the complaints in. We're not always going to be doing everything right. And the complaints is an opportunity for us to put something right that maybe has gone wrong. So I think with the adult services, they are getting a lot of things right within adult services. I think maybe there might have been some issues through lockdown, but I think they are also more reluctant complainers as well.
Right, thank you. Gary, I've just got one more point to make.
Yeah.
With complaints, people tend to think of complaints as being very negative and a bit of a moan, but there are positive reasons, aren't there, for complaining?
Yeah.
For example,
I mean, I love complaints because it's different. Every day is different. It's not, you don't know what's going to be come in from day to day. It could be something as simple as somebody's bins not being collected. And I think, complainers, I always thank complainers. First thing you say is, oh, thank you for giving us the opportunity to look into this, because we are in a world, I don't go on Facebook, but we are in a world of social media where people we can't do nothing about them. Those that go on social media and complain, I can't pick up on them. It's the ones that give us the opportunity to say, look, I feel this has gone wrong. I always think complaints is a positive. It's never a negative. It's a positive. It gives us an opportunity to put something right that person thinks has gone wrong, whether it's upheld or not, really.
That's right. And also it could be a case of the complainant disagreeing in what you were doing with a particular case.
Yeah.
Not in any negative or nasty way, but just disagreeing and trying to achieve a different outcome. And if you exhaust all your procedures, then they have got recourse outside the council, haven't they?
Yeah, they've got recourse. They can go to the Ombudsman. They have the Ombudsman opportunity to go to the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman then will contact us. And then if they go straight to the Ombudsman, the first thing the Ombudsman does is contact us and say, has this person utilised the complaint process? If they haven't, they'll direct them back to us. And they can't go to the Ombudsman until they've exhausted our process. But sometimes with complaints, it might be that person doesn't actually understand something that's been said to them. So it doesn't, to them, it's a complaint because they feel that they haven't been given certain information or something hasn't happened, but there might be a genuine reason for it. So it's to reassure people. The complaints is not just to resolve, it's to reassure as well.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, thank you very much, Gaynor, for that.
Okay.
That's all, Chair. Thanks.
Gareth?
Yeah. Okay, Chair.
You're on mute, so.
Bill, can I proceed?
I knocked the mute. I put on Nick because I was talking to Anne. I do apologise.
That's okay. It's a follow-up, really, from what Ian said, Gaynor, it is.
Yeah.
Just was on the record, really, that the stage 2 complaint is dealt with by an independent person and independent to Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council?
Yes, yeah. It's an independent investigator if it's an
Yeah.
adult complaint, and if it's a children's complaint, they have an independent investigator and an independent person. The independent person is there to monitor the independent investigator. But
I was aware that there was the case, but obviously for the record, really, because sometimes people think that when it's done solely in-house, there's a sort of stitch up, for want of a better word. But obviously they have that opportunity should it proceed to a stage 2, and then obviously from there to the Ombudsman.
Yes, yeah. I mean, before we go to stage 2, we have to be clear on what the desired outcome is, and it has to be a realistic desired outcome, because unfortunately a lot of the time it's to have somebody's head on a platter, and that's not what a stage 2 is about. It's about, you know, why do you want that person's head on a platter? What do you think has gone wrong? And maybe if that message, unfortunately, sometimes it's because people, it's not what we say, it's just we're not saying what they want to hear, but that might be you know, that might just be unfortunate the case. And we're also not there to use the complaint process to challenge any legal decisions either. So we have to be clear that it's stage 2 is not to go to and challenge the decision that's been made in court.
Yeah, quite right too. Issues of time scales, I suppose, is a problem for you too, especially with social services complaints, because often they're quite complex compared to perhaps a complaint from another service area.
Yeah.
How on average are you meeting the target? I think it's 10 working days.
It's 15 working days for a social services complaint. However, if we are holding a meeting with the complainant, then we will always say that they have to appreciate it's going to take longer, because it's setting up that meeting that's a convenient time for both. Sorry, my charger was going behind. Sorry, just plug my charger in. There was a convenient time for both the manager and the complainant. So we are hitting our timescales, and the stats that have gone, because we put stats through to the Ombudsman every quarter, and we are hitting those stats. This is what we also do in complaints as well, is monitor the timescales on complaints. So we've got sort of follows up on all of them, and then should we feel that it's coming to, well, when I say close, within a few days, I'll contact the manager then and say, are you likely to get this complaint out on response out on time? If they say no because somebody's on the sick or on leave, then we well within our right under the social services complaints process to request an extension then.
Yeah.
And the Ombudsman never would frown on that. Yeah.
Thank you again. And my final one, Bill, really is regarding the report itself, which is excellent, really, very readable and for want of a better word, easy to understand. Does that go anywhere there, Gaynor, then, or is it only for internal use and on the council website? Is it fed in?
It goes on to the public council, the public can see it as well.
Yes, but does it go elsewhere to Welsh Government or to the Ombudsman's office or
no,
not?
The Ombudsman don't ask us for a copy of it. They don't ask us for us. I mean, it's there should they want it, but they don't ask us for it. No.
Okay, thank you, Gaynor, and thank you, Bill.
Okay, Jack.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, it is. It's just in regards to Gareth's point about an independent, someone independent will look at a stage 2. Now, again, I've dealt with you a couple of times, and it's just to clarify as well that you don't actually work for social services, so you are independent as well. And I'd just like to make the point, fair as well.
Yeah, I mean, I make that clear to all complainants that I don't actually work for any particular department. The complaints department, although I work under the umbrella of the local authority, I don't actually work for social services. I work for the complaints. It's, you know, so I don't actually work alongside or within a department. I report to legal, and my line manager is Caris Kennedy, but I don't work, quite rightly so, I don't work for social services, and it's the same with corporate. Although I work under the umbrella of the local authority, I'm up on that fence.
Yeah, thank you, Gaynor.
Okay, Jane, I read the report, it's excellent.
Oh, thank
I
you.
like the comments you made about social services staff, because
It's important to you because
Yeah.
they do work, you know, as everybody works hard. But I wanted to make a point that how engaging they are with and principal managers, you know, head of children's, head of adults. I know none of them want to hear from me. I'm probably like the Grim Reaper of the local authority but they don't, and I haven't even got the option working from home to find another phone to ring them from, which is what my other little thing used to be, because they see my name come up and they think, oh gosh. But they are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. All of them, all the managers have been fantastic and sort of so engaging with meetings, and that is a massive participation to the low stats that we got going to stage 2.
Yeah, but a lot of things have happened because you've got new staff and new management, children's services, adult, and they're working with everybody to change it. And we improved that in the last 2 meetings with Scrutiny, social service Scrutiny, how the figures are altered. It's getting better. People are talking
I've never
more.
had a refusal for a meeting. I've never, it's just, yeah, great, you got my diary, get it, you know, let's get it done. And they're also very keen to address complaints. You know, nobody, it is awful, especially if you've got a complaint about an individual. I've had complaints about me and it's not nice, but you think, well, you know, that person's entitled to make a complaint. Let's see what we can do to put things right. And I think nothing better than turning somebody's opinion round and all of a sudden that social worker and that family are working together again. I think it's fantastic. I do.
So again, and the other part I want to bring up is the abuse the staff are having yourself. I know you said you're working with our legal side, the local authorities, but as council use with ComTAF, they've got a policy. Can we sit down and Lisa, can we talk as a department, because it's not so verbal abuse, you've got emails abuse, and sometimes there's bullying. You know, it's all right down abuse, but you have the same email.
Well, vexatious policy.
There's a bit of bullying going on, and it knocks you back. So can we sit there? Can we have a chat over that, at least something that we take that forward?
Yeah, I think we do it informally. I don't think there's a set policy. Like Gaynor said, we've got a vexatious policy that we do implement if we need to. But generally, if we've got somebody on the phone who is being abusive to staff verbally, then people, you know, very politely will say, look, if this carries on, I'll end the call, and they will end the call.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that does sometimes result in a complaint then.
Well, again, that people who go to the local rag complain.
Yeah, but you know, it's about,
they give a different story of what we got. So now I want some sort of policy to safeguard everybody. That's
I mean,
what
you know,
policy is
often we've got difficult messages to, you know, give across, and it's not always something that the family want to hear. But we are in the business of safeguarding, so you know,
Can we look at it anyway?
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. Again, thank you much. Appreciate it. I'll see you next year. Good luck.
See you next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
So next on the program is the forward work program. Everybody happy with that? Scrutiny referrals, feedback, I've had any, but at least whatever asked the panel to support us is have a verbal update every meeting on this coronavirus.
Okay.
That we did in the last time round. So if we can send us where we are at the present moment, an email to Scrutiny members, and then we can kick it off the next meeting.
Okay, I mean, I can give you a quick update as I know today. So we've got currently in the last week, we've had at least 10 staff off with COVID. We've got 7 who are isolating because they've come into contact, so they're awaiting PCRs. So currently, as we speak, I got a 19% absence rate of staff, so it's probably larger than it's been for a long time. We managed over Christmas. We did need agency in some of the homes because obviously some couldn't, you know, they had symptoms and had to wait for their tests. We've had 2 local providers have gone into restrictions because they've had staff test positive, so therefore that visiting is stopped as a result, and they'll go into 28-day restriction as per the previous guidance. The gold commands that were set up through the health board is now twice weekly, or was set this week, and we've met over Christmas. There were 2 meetings last week, because although they're not seeing people being admitted with COVID, what they're having is staff absence because they're testing positive, and therefore obviously can't attend work. So that's had a huge impact. So they are looking at visiting at the hospital. They've stopped, cafes and restaurants are now closed to visitors, only staff, and they've got to prove that they're staff with ID. And obviously we are working with them to try and get people out of hospital as soon as we can, which is difficult because we've got 2 domiciliary care providers in RAG status, red, because of staffing. And I think so the biggest issue at the minute is that, you know, we're losing capacity with staffing because of the virus spreading so quickly, and probably this is probably the worst position we've been in for quite some time, really.
Lise, thank you much. Any questions from members to Lise? Because it's getting, in the next couple of weeks, going to be a lot worse than it. We haven't hit the peak yet, they're saying, so fingers crossed.
Well, I think the feeling is we'll hit the peak in 3rd week of January. I think that's the modelling. And then if there are going to be hospital admissions because of COVID, we're likely to see that at the beginning of February. So they won't know, you know, the impact of this, you know, the rise at the moment until then. But it is something they're looking at. Certainly from a health board perspective, they're really struggling with staffing because they're obviously having to man the test and trace centres and the vaccination centres. So, you know, to get the vaccination booster rollout as quickly as they have done, they need the staff in there. So there's discussions about whether some services will be stepped down, and, you know, what needs to be prioritised. I don't think it's going to, you know, step down like it did in the initial lockdown, because I think obviously we've learned a lot from, you know, the aftermath, if you like, of, you know, what happened last time, because we've got, you know, some children in crisis who didn't have perhaps services they should have had straight away, you know, back going a year ago when everything was in lockdown. So I don't think we'll ever get back to that stage, but certainly is something that's being looked at and how we can help one another.
You say nothing is the best because you never know what happens.
No, I know. I'd probably
Things changes.
saying it, but, you know, from the point of view of the economy and everything else, I can't see us returning to how we were before.
It's going to be our goal in the next 2 years. Lise, I do appreciate it. Thank you very much for that.
Okay.
All right, members. Right, we go for reflection and evaluation of the meeting. Everybody happy with the meeting? Am all right? Good.
Yeah.
Happy, Chair.
Forward work program. Received updates. We got nothing. The forward work program is there. Sean, we got nothing to put on, are we? Oh, we are.
No, you just to confirm, previously you talked about maybe having a dementia, having some information on a dementia report. Perhaps I could suggest, because we've only got 2 scrutinies left this municipal year, obviously down to the election process in May. So perhaps I could possibly suggest that we could look to place something down at the bottom of our forward work programme as a reminder for when we come to doing the next municipal year's forward work programme.
So, Sean, you're hoping everybody will return in.
I have every confidence.
Oh, hey, tell you a workaround do. If you can fit it in, if it's too much, no problem. The only one I want to put on the bottom as well is with the Linden. With the when we will do training on the youth.
Yes, yeah, that's one of the actions that's still outstanding.
Yeah, so if that don't happen,
I'm finding it very difficult to get everybody's in on a particular date and a response. So I will chase that up now, the beginning of this year. I will chase that up to try and get in a date as soon as possible for that workshop for Linden, and to come over and just explain more in depth what it does with regards to Merthyr for the OS. So yeah, I will do that.
Okay,
are we okay then to put the dementia action plan details kind of thing?
Yeah. What do you say? Just in case.
Yeah. We'll buy every fair.
Have faith.
Yeah.
Okay, folks,
Thank you.
anything for members? So
No,
I'm
Chair,
gonna say
thank you.
vote for, all right, any other business? I'm gonna do other business. Can I say? Good night. And thank you very much.
Thank you
Bye,
all.
bye.
Thanks all.
Good night, Chair.
Yeah.